Bronwyn Bishop, a Gold Coast small business operator, small business, doing it tough. I know the Prime Minister is going to give them some additional assistance, but doing it incredibly tough in Sydney now, and indeed South East Queensland still. Gold Coast tourist operator put a right to information request into Queensland Health to try and find out what was the decision behind why the borders were shut here and why the borders were shut there. Guess what? The email system was corrupted. I think the decision was corrupted and the emails just simply followed suit. I mean, there is something seriously small c corrupt with the way this whole thing is being handled. Bronwyn?
Gary, the problem is that we are no longer getting independent medical advice. We now have seen the medical voice merged into the political voice. This is now all about politics. Fear has been the main tool that has been used by the premiers to lock down states and to have the sort of behaviour we've just been discussing. You know, people forget, in the last 24 hours, 400 people died in Australia, not from COVID, but from a whole lot of other things. And the loss of those lives is just as important as anybody else's life, lost from COVID or anything else. So we haven't had a death from COVID in this country since the 28th of December last year. And when we see the sort of relentless statements coming out of the political mouth saying, oh, we're relying on the medical advice, and people are starting to say, well, show it to us, you get the sort of response or the sort of incident that you just described. So we need to know the facts. I'll say it again. We need to be told the truth. We need to be told the truth about what this disease really is doing. Because in New South Wales at the moment, when we had an outbreak in the Northern Beaches where I lived, this is my third lockdown. We were locked down right over Christmas, and our citizens were very good. 60,000 people turned up to be tested. But when it happened in Bondi and in the eastern suburbs, nothing. And the statement was made, oh, these people move more often. What sort of an answer is that? And now, when action is being taken in the southwestern area of Sydney, it's now being labelled as racist because there are many folk there who have come as migrants to Australia. It's not racist, but the damage is it's become a political question now, not a medical one. It's doubly important because in Queensland, you've got the ridiculous situation of the so-called independent medical voice being the governor-designate, appointed by the Premier, to whom she must have obligations. She should resign. There should be a new voice that is heard there. And down in Sydney, where we hear there's a split in the crisis subcommittee of cabinet, which is making decisions. You've got the Treasurer and I think perhaps also the Health Minister from earlier statements saying that we've got to learn to live with this disease. But as long as we've got the parliamentarians or the ministers making statements and the media covering it for every inch of its life, I mean, I have found myself shouting at the television screen because I'm so sick of hearing the shibboleths that are just wrong. And we're not being told that truth. So we have to say...
Well, Bronwyn, I know that as a former Speaker, you'd like to warn them under Section 92A and just throw them out, half of these people. I'd be throwing them out. I'd throw them out of media conferences, these people. It's getting ridiculous. And Caleb, look, I mean, Caleb, there's been a lot of stuff written in other places. So it's not just here in Australia. We seem to be following a pattern of behaviour, this sort of oxymoronic situation where the rate of injections are up, so people are getting vaccinated apparently, but there's a spike in the disease. And so it's like, you know, the truth is a lie and the lie is a truth. It is Big Brother. There is a whole rewriting of this. And, of course, the terrific article by Chris Ullman, who is a very informed journalist. I admire him greatly. I wished he worked for Sky because then I could really praise him highly. But he wrote the terrific thing about the fact that there is this enormous big lie that's about to be revealed. The fact is the vaccine doesn't actually stop you getting the bug. People are getting it thinking they won't get the bug. You'll get the bug. It's like a flu injection. It just won't be the full effect of it. But either way, as Bronwyn says, we need some honesty. Caleb, we're just getting verbal diarrhea from so many people in public life right now.
Tell me about it. And I tell you what, Bronwyn, my girlfriend knows exactly what you're talking about, because we find ourselves either sitting in front of the TV at night or I'm driving around in the car. And, you get some numpty who's supposedly an expert on something to do with coronavirus comes on the radio, and they're going on about how we need to lock down and every person in Sydney needs to be put in a silo and locked away for 17 weeks, all this stuff. And I find myself shouting frequently with words that I can't use on Sky. So Rosie knows exactly what you're talking about, Bronwyn, because she lives it every day with me. And it's no wonder, because we're hearing this thing now about COVID fatigue, which I think is a real thing, that people are sick of hearing about COVID and the various things that go with it and the media circus that goes with it and whatever, right? And I can totally understand that, because we've been going through all of this crap for, nearly 18 months now, right? But the point is that we cannot let we cannot let this COVID fatigue stop us from caring about these issues. Because if we get fatigued to the point where we go, I don't want to talk about this anymore, then we will allow governments and we will allow these public health bureaucrats to do whatever the hell they like. What they are doing is, working us down, running us down to the point where we go, oh my God, I'm just going to roll over and take it. And we have to make sure we don't get to that point. And you talk about nonsense, Gary. Your public health officer, Jeanette Young, is an absolute queen of nonsense. And I know we talked about this last week on the front page, but, you've got advice coming out from her saying, I'm more worried that a young person is going to die from getting the AZ vaccination than I am that they're going to die from COVID, which is just patent rubbish. You've got other people running around thinking that, the vaccine is going to answer all our problems. The vaccine isn't going to answer all of our problems. It's just going to make them a little easier to deal with. You may still get the virus, and if you're unlucky, you might die from it. I mean, this is just a fact of life. This virus exists. It's never going to be removed from the world. The vaccine, in most cases, will mean that if you get it, it'll be a very mild cold. And in most people, it already is a mild cold. It's an extra level of protection against the virus. The nonsense that has been spewed and is continually being spewed about Delta strain. You've got people running around saying this I heard someone on the ABC today saying this highly dangerous Delta strain. Well, hang on a minute. Yes, it might be highly transmissible, but all the data shows that it is nowhere near as dangerous as the original strain of coronavirus. You've got people running around whipping up this fear, and it is nonsense.